Hello world, I am Curtis Simpson, and this is the 1 year anniversary of Typography News. This is number 37. Today is Monday, not Sunday, Monday, March 9th, 2026. I'll get to why we're doing this on Monday here in just a bit. It's been a couple of weeks off, so I've got a lot of stuff that happened and not a lot of time to report it. I will give you a rundown of what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to go over some, well, let's just go ahead and give you the rundown. I am going to talk about a new format that we're going to do with Typography News. We have outgrown the once a week Sunday night live stream, so I'll get to that in a minute. I'm also going to talk about some lessons that I learned this year, because there are a lot of them, and for anyone that is... I don't know. I think that anybody that hasn't been paying attention every week, and maybe you've been watching every week, and you'll see these lessons too. But there was so much stuff that I learned about typography and the industry, and I still feel like I'm just like at the bottom of the mountain. Next, there were a ton of new releases. We're not actually going to cover any of them. There were probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 new releases. I was narrowing it down to like the top 10 and top 12, but they're just too big and too good, and new ones just keep coming every day. And I think that we just got to let it pass like water, like the wind, just let it go. And I've got some really great stories to talk about today. We're going to talk about some like big industry stories. We're still going to look at 3 typefaces today because there were, actually we're going to look at like 9 typefaces today, 3 custom fonts, and then 6 from a new Type Foundry created by an old Type Foundry. But it's going to be fun. We've got some Canva, Cavalry news. We've got Atipo launched a new Type Foundry called Patio Foundry. Anagram or ambigram? Someone correct me. And then Fontwerk released Duck Sans. They released the case study for Duck Sans. It's the custom typeface for DuckDuckGo. And then I've got 2 typefaces and branding that were done by Studio Drama. One for Snickers. They created Snicker Sans. Pretty cool. And then they created BBH. They've got 3 different BBH typefaces for Bartles Bogle, and let me see, for Bartle, Bogle, and Haggerty. So really cool, fun stories. No new releases though, so if you're wanting new releases, listen for like the next few minutes and you'll understand when those are coming. But otherwise, let's go ahead and get into it. It's gonna be a little bit of talking head for a second here. If you're watching the replay of this, there are going to be chapters linked in the description, along with links for all of the stories. So go ahead and skip ahead past my little talking head if you don't want to know what I learned over the last year and how the format of Typography News is going to change. If you just want the stories, go ahead and skip ahead. There are some good ones, so don't miss those. But per usual, none of the links are sponsored. None of them are affiliate on the news. They are just there for your convenience. So I'm going to keep my face on the screen for now. I wanted to note that, yes, it has been 1 year. Yes, we've been doing this live on Sundays. I don't think we've quite been doing it live for 1 year. My first Typography News was 1 year ago. The best thing I ever did was go live. After the first 4 episodes, I went live. I guess technically, like prior to that, you can see it's kind of hot in here. I'm a little sweaty. Not nervous. It's just in Brazil, it is late summer, whereas I know northern hemisphere, it is late winter. But yeah, it's kind of hot in here tonight. Anyway, the best thing I did was start going live. I did 2 pre-recorded, like brand new fonts before I started doing like real typography news. And then I did 4 pre-recorded typography news episodes. And man, like the pressure that you put on yourself and like doing retakes and like trying to get your wording perfect. I went back and watched some of them, and like, even though I know so much more now and I'm so much more knowledgeable and skilled at talking, those were pretty polished. Like those were much more polished than my live streams. That's just the nature of the beast. But you know, those would take several hours to record, like a 30-minute video or something like that, or sometimes like 15 minutes. Whereas this, it takes the amount of time that it takes. Previously, we were live streaming for 90 minutes. Now we're just going to hit this for 60 minutes at a time. And that brings me to the next point. The next evolution of this is going to be live streaming throughout the month of March 3 days a week. So I'm going to be going Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The ultimate goal is to be going Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. But old Curtis would have jumped in and been like, yeah, we're going 5 days a week. After 1 year of doing this, I know that I need to pace myself. I know there's plenty of stories to do this 5 days a week. I have no doubt about that. I have to cut so much content every single week that I know doing this 5 days a week is possible in terms of the amount of content. Even if it was a slow news day, I have so much content that is on my back burner, from book reviews and magazine reviews and publications and interviews and so much stuff that I'm going to have no problem filling the time. The problem is the actual like physically doing it. I've come up with a schedule and that's why I say for the month of March, we're going to hit this 3 days a week. Hopefully in April, we can push to 5 days a week. But if it feels really hard at the end of March, I'm just going to recalibrate, figure out how to do it 3 days a week, because I do think that having like a daily news show is good, and doing a little bit shorter episodes, I think more people will be interested in that as well, because I know that an hour and a half is a big ask for a lot of people to click for the first time. Those of you who are, weekly viewers or subscribers, you've been here from the beginning, my day ones. Anybody that's here right now is one of the day ones for sure. Some people just like to watch because they like to hear a familiar voice. I do that with a lot of channels. I have them on in the background when I'm doing lots of things throughout the day. So maybe some of you will be a little disappointed by the shorter episodes, but you're actually going to be getting twice as much throughout the week, because we're going to hit it 3 times a week for an hour. So instead of 90 minutes, we're going to have 3 hours of total in the week. Let me go ahead and move on to some lessons that I learned. And I apologize, this is a little bit disorganized. I was planning on doing my regular 90-minute live stream yesterday, but we were in and out of the multiple hospitals with my daughter this weekend. She's fine, but it was just a mess, and I'm working from notebooks rather than my typical Obsidian notes. I do have notes for Obsidian for the stories, but for this 1 year stuff, I'm going to be looking down at my regular paper here. But the thing that I'm excited about doing this, eventually 5 days a week, is that we're going to get to cover and talk about so many stories that I typically have to cut. And I cut them because, it makes for a better 90-minute episode. It's the cream of the crop, but there are so many good typefaces that I don't have time to cover. There are so many interesting stories that are like very timely, it would be really fun to talk about this right now, but 6 days from now, it's not going to be as big of a story. Or if a new release comes out on Friday, there's no way for me to get that font and test it and see if it's actually worth reporting on by Sunday. And then the next Monday, new fonts are coming. So I think we're going to have a much more fluid thing going here, where once we get up to those 5 days a week, I think it's just going to, I think we'll look back a year from now and I'll probably tell you again, like, oh my gosh, going to 5 days from 1 day a week was the second best decision that I made in terms of typography news. I'm just going to look down at my notes now and then. And like I said, there will be chapters. So please, if you don't want to listen to me blabber on for the next 10 minutes or whatever, just go ahead and skip ahead, because the stories are very good. I'm going to try to keep this brief because the stories are really good. I've got 5 decent stories, so I'm going to try to spend like 5 minutes on this. I have more than 5 minutes of notes, but let me go ahead and just burn through these as fast as I can. The first thing I learned is how little I actually knew about typography. I did study graphic design. I have multiple degrees, but I have a graphic design degree, and we only took 2 typography classes in that. And it's one of those things when you're a designer. I was doing branding, freelance branding. Before that, I worked at Louis Vuitton as the art coordinator in Las Vegas. And, I thought I knew typography. I knew how to use typography, but I did not know the industry at all. I don't even know that I necessarily knew what a foundry was. Like, prior to, I knew, like, I had some vague notion of what a foundry was, but I mostly thought about fonts, designers, and marketplaces. So I think there's probably a lot of people that are in a similar boat to where I was a year ago that probably don't even know I don't know. It's not that I didn't know where fonts came from, but like I never necessarily thought of foundries. I knew of some of them, but like I just thought of fonts basically and designers. So I don't know. There's just so much about it that I didn't know. I didn't realize how international it was being American. I live in Brazil now, but like being American, like you don't even have to like think outside of America if you don't want to. And I'm sure that most of the people in the world or most of the people in the US um, will recognize that a lot of Americans don't see outside of that bubble. And in terms of design, like I just had, or type design, I just had no concept outside of Gutenberg, like I didn't know anything about Dutch typography. I didn't know anything about, what schools taught typography. I didn't know anything about French typography. I didn't know, just, and like I said, I barely know any, like the more that I've learned, the more I know how little I know. And there's not enough time in a lifetime to learn everything about typography. There's just not. Like anybody that claims they know everything, they're lying. But I'm excited. I'm so excited to learn more. And after a year of doing this, I see how wide open this field is, and I'm very bullish on typography in general. Another topic for another day. But yeah, just how international typography is. It really is something that kind of brings everybody together. And I know that I focus on Latin typography. There's typography beyond that for sure. But even just dealing with Latin typography, I've been amazed at how international everything is. Yeah, how many typefaces and how many foundries there are? There are so many, and I don't think that not anybody, I don't think that most people, especially graphic designers, probably people that are in type design, understand how many typefaces are released in 2026 every week, how many new foundries there are in a month and a week. But as a graphic designer, a typographer, I just had no concept of how much is out there. And I think that's one service that I can provide with Typography News is like, hitting these new releases, and with the more frequent episodes, I'll be able to note more of those, and hopefully grow typography in general, like expose more people to more foundries, and then expose those foundries to more people. I think that's enough. I think that's enough. I did have one more note, but I don't remember what it was. The stories are too good to the last thing I'll say about what I learned this last year is just how different my perspective on type designers and typography is. I spent a lot of time on Instagram prior to this. I've spent almost zero time on Instagram now. I'm subscribed to so many newsletters and checking different direct sources and talking to actual foundries and stuff like that I don't spend very much time on Instagram anymore. If you're someone that's not like in the type industry, you probably follow a lot of the type designers that I followed before I started reporting the news. And I very quickly learned, I would say within 3 to 6 months, I learned that a lot of the type designers that are really big on Instagram are much better at Instagram than they are at type design. And that's not necessarily like throwing shade. That's a skill as well. And a lot of them are doing it to get like clients to do custom logos and things like that. And they're more branding design focused. They're not necessarily like focused on creating the next Helvetica or Gotham or something like that. But being able to see all of these incredible typefaces, and I've gotten a lot of review copies once I started requesting those, being able to see what like a really good typeface looks like makes me almost embarrassed. It's kind of cringe to look back at some of the typefaces that I talked about in early episodes where they were just the designers that I was familiar with. And I spent years following them on Instagram, and the quality of what you're getting, how do I say this? Once you know what to look for, just like anything when you've learned design or you've learned any skill, once you know what to look for, you understand the difference between a good font and, a not so good font, or even the difference between like what you could possibly use a typeface for. If it doesn't support very many languages, if it doesn't have lowercase, if it doesn't have punctuation, if it doesn't have numbers, there are a lot of display typefaces on Instagram that look really, really cool on a post that would just be unusable in real life. So hopefully I can help educate people on that as well. WH12, nice to see you, says, I enjoy your typography update series. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and get into some of these updates because I've been blabbering on about myself for the last 15 minutes, and I think that these stories are more important than what I have to say. I will have plenty to say throughout the coming years, but I do think that it's worth marking this 1 year moment for Typography News. I appreciate everyone that's been here, for me, this has been a success over the last year. And I'm even more excited and passionate about this than when I first started. And to be honest, when I first started, I had no concept of what this was going to be. I just kind of did it. And I would encourage you to do the same if there's something that you're like vaguely interested in doing, because you don't know what it might turn into. Okay, I actually have notes for the rest of this. We're going to switch to the screen because I have five really fun stories. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my screen if I can remember how to do this. There we go. I'll go ahead and put my face on here for the beginning, but I'll take it off. Probably, maybe not, since we're not looking at a lot of typefaces today. We are, but we're not going to pull them up in Affinity or anything like that. If my face gets in the way, I'll take it off. First story is Canva acquired Cavalry. This is an acqui-hire, so like they have the team with them. I reported on Canva's big reveal of Affinity whenever they did that, and so I've been paying attention to Canva mostly since they acquired Affinity, because that is the design software that I use. But they recently acquired Cavalry. This is a motion design software. Actually, I have it pulled up right here. Let me go ahead and put this on the screen while, yeah, I am going to take my face off here. Let me go ahead and put this on the screen. So it is basically an After Effects alternative, and it's always been free for like a basic version. It's kind of got it's kind of like a DaVinci Resolve model. Like it's free, but there are features that you don't get. There are restrictions. You can't record, you can't export in like 4K. But actually, rather than showing you this, so I just wanted to give you a brief idea of what the interface looks like. It's a professional app. It's a professional app for sure. But let's go ahead and watch this Cavalry Canva YouTube video right here, and I'm gonna keep the sound off because last time my video got demonetized when I had it on during the Affinity reveal. But let me go ahead and let this play, and you'll kind of get a better idea because all of this stuff right here was made in Cavalry. It is a professional motion design tool, and it has a lot of things that that people like. I'm not a motion graphics person, but it has a lot of things that I've seen people like more than After Effects. It doesn't have all the plugins and stuff like that, but for like the nerds that really like to code, from what I understand, this is head and shoulders above After Effects. It's definitely way lighter, but you can see right here, they're talking about Affinity. I'll go ahead and let that play. Anybody that watched the Affinity announcement, that was October 30th, so almost like 5.5 months ago. Anybody that, and this guy's doing an O face, anybody that watched that announcement probably saw some comments about like, oh, did you use After Effects to like animate this? And in the back of my head, I was wondering if they used Cavalry because they had to have something to do it. And then at the end of this this announcement right here, you can see they're showing in app how they animated the Affinity stuff. So I'm really excited for this. You can see the typography and stuff on there. You can do some really cool kinetic stuff. And one of the themes that we've been seeing so much over the last year is the motion fonts that have been created with variable fonts. Let me just go ahead and loop this. We'll just let it play. So I'm really excited to see how they might integrate this with Affinity. I don't know, there is the free version, and they're saying the free version is always going to stay how it is. It's not going to be like Affinity where like you get all of the features. They're going to keep it pared down like they do DaVinci Resolve. But it's still pretty cool. And now, there's something else that's kind of building into that ecosystem, and you're seeing real shots taken at Adobe. So I think that is always good. Anytime there is competition, it's good. Is it good that we're kind of building up these two monopolies right now? You've got Affinity kind of acquiring all this stuff that used to be independent, or not Affinity. You have Canva acquiring all this stuff that used to be independent. Is that good? Is that bad? I think time will tell. I know that Canva is moving towards an IPO. They've been wanting to do that for a couple of years now. I think once we see that, we'll see what their intentions actually are. We'll see if the shitification ensues. But for now, I have been happy with the way that they have handled Affinity, and I'm excited to see how they handle Cavalry, because you can see I have it, but I don't use this. I don't use this because the manual for it was terrible. It was incomplete. It was just, a new person couldn't work their way through it. At least I couldn't. And I'm familiar with DaVinci. I'm familiar with Premiere. I'm familiar with Adobe Flash and Moho and Blender, but I was never an After Effects guy. So I think that they were just kind of like, oh, if you're coming from After Effects, you'll just understand. We don't need to explain it. I'm really hopeful that Canva takes on that and kind of makes like a better user manual and better help section. So something to look forward to. I expect that we will continue seeing more motion fonts, more animated variable fonts, fonts that are designed specifically for animation. And Cavalry is going to be, hopefully, like a good competitor with After Effects, so we can get even more options for designers. Anytime there's competition, it's great for the end users. Next up, a little bit more type focused, is Patio Foundry. This is a new foundry created by Atipo, and this is just the email announcement. I wanted to bring this up, but I do have some notes over here. I am going to take my face off because I know I'm going to be blocking stuff for this one. I'm going to get a drink, and we will get into this. As you can see, this says Patio Foundry, TM, is where Atipo plays through expressive and display type. There are a lot of foundries that do this. Just to name a few that I wrote down like from top of mind. Type Today has Type Tomorrow. Pangram has Off Type. That has Vanilla Type. That one's kind of the opposite. Delfonts, they don't have another separate type foundry, but they do have Proceps. Kilo Type has Concepts. Ono Type has Drawer. So this isn't like an entirely new concept. And I do think it would be interesting to talk to some of these foundries and be like, why don't you just put it all out on the same foundry? But I think, they're working with branding and, they have some sort of aesthetic that they think matches a certain brand. And that's fine. But I don't know that they needed to create a new foundry, but it does kind of create a little bit of buzz. I mean, we're sitting here talking about it. They came out the gate with 6 new typefaces. So we're just going to scroll through these real quick because we do have some really good stories. But I was impressed with the quality of these. And if you look up here at the top, you can get trials right here. Just put in your email and you can download the trials. Let me check my notes real quick. I want to see if they are, I apologize. I should have had this written down. I want to see if they're full fonts or if they're just limited characters. I don't know because Atipo actually doesn't do these trials like this. So I did download them. I could check it out, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Look at these typefaces. So this one is called Rubica, and it is clearly, like a Trajan style typeface. But they're doing some really interesting stuff here with these ligatures. You can see there are a lot of crazy ligatures, and a lot of these are inspired by historical ligatures. I've seen a lot of these where they stick the I inside of the C or the A inside of the C, the O inside of the C. Just some of these weird things where they kind of stick a small E inside of certain letters. I don't know that anybody knows exactly why they did this, thousands of years ago. But it is pretty fun that that Patio Type here is doing their best homage at this, and you can test it out here. But you can download all these to try. I did download these, but I don't remember. Let's just check it real quick. Why not? I'm going to check. Let's go ahead and sit on this cool image right here. I'm going to check just to see if these fonts are trials, if they're the full files or not. And the best way for me to do that, I think that I did check these. I think the best way to check this is go to Wacom Fondue and drop this font in, and we'll be able to see. Okay, so when you see 67, 68 glyphs, that's like the basic limited character set. So it'll be like uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and a tiny amount of punctuation. So you're not going to get the full fonts for the trials, but any trial is better than no trial. I think you get the idea of what's going on here with Rubica. Let's go ahead and burn through some more of these. The next one here is Zenky. I think it's Zenky. It's Xanky. Immediately you can see the problem here. You don't know if that's an X, if it's an N. So there is a little bit of legibility, and I think it was kind of a poor choice to use that for the name of the font, because it immediately points that out to you that there is going to be some legibility issues. But look how cool this looks when you aren't dealing with a letter that's a little bit questionable. And you can see how they've handled the N there. So the N's not quite as pushed in. But that 7, is that an A7 or is that an AT? That's an A7. But it's really cool. It's definitely a display typeface, but I feel like each one of these also really hits a certain vibe. It's not like you're seeing 6 typefaces that are all basically the same. You're really getting what would you say? You're really getting very unique typefaces for these first 6 ones. This one here, I think they said it was inspired by here it is, the New York Funk Company. No, that's just a thing. I think they were clearly inspired. Oh, it says Saul Bass. Okay, it says this display font channels the bold mid-century brilliance of Saul Bass. Forget rigid geometry. Sliza is built on raw dynamic energy of hand-cut paper and collage. Yeah, for sure, I can see that. You can see with the ABC here, they're even going through some alternates, so that's always great to see with these things, especially if you're trying to imitate Saul Bass, the master of those opening credit lettering and stuff like that, and a lot of posters and plenty of other great designs. But yeah, a lot of you probably know like the opening credits that Saul Bass has done, and when they're lettering, every letter can be unique. When you're doing a font, you need these open type alternates included. And you can see there are a lot of ligatures and stuff too. So this looks pretty well developed. I've seen other Saul Bass inspired typefaces, but this one looks really nice. Definitely would like to play around with this. I might reach out and see if we can get the full files to do a little bit of a review on these, but just to give you a preview of these, I think they've done an incredible job with the specimens for sure. The next one here is Marksy. I'm always a little bit weary of these types of fonts that have like the really jagged edges on it that look like handwriting, because they're never going to look like handwriting, right? But you can see that there are a decent amount of alternates here. I don't know how many there are. It looks like maybe there's 3 of them, because you can see 2 A's repeating on here. But it looks pretty cool. Looks like there's some icons and stuff. Once again, the specimens here look amazing. And when you're looking at this block of text, if you're just looking at it like at a quick glance, it could definitely pass for handwriting. And you can see, if we look at pressure right here, you can see on pressure, I don't know if you can see that, but where my mouse is, pressure, you've got 2 S's, 2 E's, 2 R's, and each one of those is different. I think that's kind of the minimum. If they do have 3 alternates, definitely, that's enough to get by in most cases. I would love to see 5 alternates. Bayo Sands and Bayo Wolf from Letter, they each have 5 alternates. So I think that's the gold standard, but at least they have 3. That's plenty. And this is a brand new typefaces. These could always be expanded for sure. Next up here is Jift. And you can see what this is. It's kind of a geometric, it's kind of like a blocky font that they've taken these like circular segments out of. I think this is one of those, like, what you see is what you get. You're going to know real quick the vibe of this one. So one downside you could see for this is you're going to get a lot of negative shapes that you might not be able to necessarily plan for or want, but it does look pretty cool. And the last one here is BitRush. I am a fan of pixel fonts. I didn't used to be, but this one looks incredibly well done. It just looks so sharp. I think the downside with any pixel font is that if it doesn't really match the pixel grid, you're going to get a little bit of you're gonna get some anti-aliasing, stuff like that. But I mean, this one looks solid. And then they've got the dot version of it, so they've got square and dot in this typeface. And I did pull this one up in Affinity, but I don't think, yeah, I don't have that on there. I just have my thumbnail on there that I exported right before I started this live video. The one note that I did see about this one is that on some of those letters, like if you look at the letters that have diagonals, the N, the Y, the V, you're gonna have some spots that look much lighter. You know, it's just the nature of the beast with these things. But if you look at rhythmic right down here, I mean, that would be something that would bother me. So I probably wouldn't go with this. But that's the nature of the beast. Once again, with a pixel font, you know, that's kind of the charm of them. Looks like they do have quite a few alternates for this. Wow, look at all of those. Look at all those different A's and M's. Wow, this is very impressive. I am going to reach out to them this week, and we'll see if we can get our hands on this. And that is the beauty of this new format, where we can kind of introduce something, do like a real like news release, and then do kind of the review separate of it. I know this is also very subjective. I'm just talking about how much I like it. But hopefully this is a fair representation. You know, I'm showing you the actual website, so it's kind of hard to be unfair when you're showing that. But the next story we're going to be talking about here is not a new Type Foundry. I do not have my stuff organized. The next thing we're going to talk about is a new typeface that unfortunately we're not going to have access to, but is very cool nonetheless. And that is going to be a semi-custom typeface for DuckDuckGo. And let's see if this one's going to load. It looks like my internet is a little slow. I don't know what's going on. If we do have a problem here, I will just report on this a different week. But let me go ahead and try this again. Okay. I am going to let this load in the background, and we're going to talk about some typefaces from... Let me go ahead and delete the cookies real quick, and we'll see if that helps it. I don't know that it will, but we can try. That's unfortunate. We could look at it on Instagram, though. Let's go ahead and do this. This will give us something at least. Hopefully this typeface loads in the background. It doesn't look like it's going to, unfortunately. But this is the custom typeface that they did for DuckDuckGo. They started this in spring of 2025. I actually talked to Ivo about this, and I didn't even realize, you know, he mentioned doing a custom typeface for DuckDuckGo, and I was so naive that I thought it was something they'd already done. I wasn't realizing that it was a work in progress. I definitely would have asked more questions had I known. There we go. Okay. So this is it right here. It is a customized... Okay, so they have Pangea, which is their typeface that's been released for a while, but... DuckDuckGo reached out to them and wanted to see if they could create a custom version of Pangea to replace Proxima Nova as the default search results. For me, DuckDuckGo lets you put any custom font on there that you want. So I have long ago replaced Proxima Nova. And I just replaced it with Roboto because I like the way Roboto looks. I have it in Affinity, or not Affinity. I have it in Obsidian. I have it on DuckDuckGo. Pangea is nice though, or Duck Sans is nice though. But you can see here they're flipping back and forth between Pangea and Duck Sans. And what they started with was they put this out like an A/B test where they released it for like 24 hours. They changed the default font for some people to Pangea to see like what the effect would be. After 24 hours, they decided, okay, let's go with this typeface. Let's create a custom version of this. And you can see what they did here. They shrunk it down by 3% to make it a little bit more in line with Proxima Nova so that it wasn't such a jarring change from the two. I would be interested to see, you know, it probably wouldn't be worth it at this point, but I'd be interested to see like what Pangea versus Duck Sans, what those results would be, and then you would know if it was actually worth doing the change or not. But this is a typeface that they can own, so that's always great. Just seeing it in context right here, let me scroll down a little bit. They did make a variable font out of this, so they've got 3 axes here: weight, width, and optical size, which is pretty interesting. I think they did end up creating static fonts out of this. I'm not sure if if DuckDuckGo has actually got variable files, because they probably do for like print and stuff like that. But in terms of the websites, one of the things they did was optimize the hell out of this, and we're going to get to that in a second. And you wouldn't want a variable font for something like a search engine, because you want to be able to make the results pop up as fast as possible. One of the really cool things they did here, though, was ICU-THS. One of the things that they did was they created custom numbers. And looking back and forth at these, I can't necessarily decide which ones I like better, but I do feel like the Duck Sans, so Duck Sans is in red, Pangea is in blue. I do feel like Duck Sans is just a little bit more comfortable. I'm not sure what it is. You know, maybe it's the old school 1 and the fully rounded 3s and the rounded 6s and 9s. It just feels a little bit more friendly and comfortable, whereas Pangea is a little bit more sharp and cold and geometric. So I do think that that's an interesting choice, like that they want it to be more, as they wrote up here, a little more grotesque rather than, oh, it looks like you can click on it to make it bigger. That's nice. They wanted theirs to be a little bit more grotesque rather than this more cold and geometric version of it. Let me go ahead and answer the chat real quick here. THS Posting said, "You just popped up out of my feed. That's so cool that there are graphic designers that do news about such niche topics. Good luck to you. Keep up the good work." I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just hit 1 year of doing this, so I'm glad that I'm starting to reach a few more people. But you can see here they've changed a few 4 different letters here specifically that they called out, and that was the G, the M, the lowercase I, and the lowercase L. So they took off the little tail on the L for the product, the regular weight, and then for the display, the bold one, they kept the little tail on the L there. We got to keep moving though, because I don't have a ton of time. One of the fun things I'll point out real quick here is they did change the ampersand, and then they made like a little duck build version of it. That was pretty fun. I have seen this in other typefaces before. Futura 100 does this, where when you type Futura 100, it changes to like a special version of it. When you type DuckDuckGo, through the magic of OpenType, they've got it to where the K and the uppercase G will change to a specific version for the brand name DuckDuckGo. So here is the optimization. I don't have time to go into all of this, but this is linked in the description. File size reduction. They took Pangea from 136 kilobytes, which is fine, down to 15 kilobytes. That is insane. That is a tiny font file. And, you know, that's going to be great because over the lifetime, or even over a day or a month, that's going to save so much loading time and energy. And, you know, they mentioned the carbon footprint and things like that, but just, you're going to be able to load your results much faster. And that's what you want. So that is Duck Sans by Fontwerk. Very cool. Let's move on. We've got 2 more custom typefaces, and these are both coming from Studio Drama. The first one here is Snickers. This is Snickers Sans. Snickers Sans here, I'm just going to scroll through it because they did an excellent job breaking this all down. So I'm going to get a drink of water as we do a slow scroll, and then I'll start talking as we get to some of the more interesting parts. I'm going to stop here because I know there's a video here that's going to load. I apologize. It's always very slow to load on this webpage. I'm not sure why. If it doesn't load, then we'll just keep moving. 3, 2, 1. Okay, yeah, we're going to keep moving. There's a video on all these studio drama pages that loads right there, but it's really slow to load. So you can see the before and after here on the left where it says they removed the inline. I never hated the inline, but once you see it without it, you're like, oh yeah, that's so much cleaner. And some people complain about the flattening of everything, you know, that happened over like the last 20 years. MP IUC, I'm going to say IU5. I'll just kind of call you MP. MP says, "This is awesome. Really glad I found the channel." I appreciate that you found the channel too. It's pretty exciting. They removed the inline on the Snickers here. They improved the spacing. They created this entire typeface out of the Snickers logo. So they started with the Snickers logo. They created an entire typeface called Snickers Sans. They've got a couple of different styles for it, at least a couple I know for sure on here. But you can see just the tiny changes. And this is what I love about Studio Drama. They point out all of the little details that I would typically have to dig into myself and point out. But you can see what they've done here. They've aligned the crossbar for all of these. This is something funny that non-designers typically point out, is when the crossbar and the midpoints of typefaces don't line up. I think in a logo, it's perfect to make those line up. But typically in like a display type, in a typeface like this, sometimes people that are not designers will be like, look at the crossbar of the A, it's so low versus the crossbar on the E versus the P. Like, they shouldn't line up. They should, like, for balance and things like that, they should not line up. But it's really cool that they managed to make that happen in the logo, because it does just, it looks great. All of the spacing looks really great. And that's what typography mostly is spacing. So this is a display style here. I guess they're calling this display epic. No, maybe it's just display, but they've got display, and then they've got 4 different styles here. So they've got display epic, display everyday, display text bold, and text regular. So that's going to be like your text and display typefaces. Here are some of the inspirations that they pulled this from. So you can see they pulled this from American Gothic. Snickers Sans takes inspiration from the bold tradition of American Gothic. A lot of typefaces have taken inspiration from American Gothic, and for good reason. It's a great display typeface. It's very strong. I am going to respond to chat real quick while we sit and look at this epic and everyday, and you can kind of see a little bit of the difference. I'll get into it in a second here. But THS says, most modern product designers push so many assets and animations, which causes pages to load longer and longer these days. Such an awful trend. Subsequently, he said, or they said, I'm just going to say he said, this font would be great for sports. I agree. This would be excellent for sports. And yeah, I also agree that a lot of websites they have so much on them that the page just loads really slow. But you can see some of the difference here. The first thing you'll be able to note between these two, I wish we could stop this animation. Maybe we can. Let's see if we can get some controls on this. Nope. Okay, I'm going to go through this part really fast because that's going to bug me. But you can see the difference between the epic and the everyday. It's just going to be spaced a lot tighter because the epic is going to be really, really, really big. And these are both display typefaces, but everyday is going to be a little bit more spaced out. So let's just go on. I can't stand these constantly moving GIFs and videos and stuff. But you can see it really does feel like Snickers, and the Snickers logo is italic. It's always italic, so it makes it feel like it's faster. It does feel like sports. It does feel like a race car. So it must have been a little bit of a challenge to make just a standard Roman version of this. But pulling from American Gothic, I'm sure they've got some, they've got a good reference for that. But it really does feel like Snickers. I think they did a great job with this. And we'll go through this a little bit faster because, at a certain point, there's only so much you can look at. But I do want to get to the text version of this because I think that the whole thing pulls together well. And since they created a text version to go with this display version, display style, it really makes it so they don't have to pull in another typeface. They don't have to pull in like, I don't know, Helvetica or Roboto or something that everybody else is going to be using. So it still feels like Snickers Sans because it is. But you can see between the display and the text right here, might have to zoom out a little bit if we can't get this perfect. There we go. That's pretty perfect. You can see how much taller the X height is on the top. The top is display. The bottom is sans, or is text. I apologize. Top is display, bottom is text. You can see how much taller the X height is. So how much taller those lowercase letters are, and how short those ascenders are. If you were reading a block of text, that would become very difficult to read like that because it would just be, you don't have the ascenders to look at. And the ascenders in the text version aren't like huge or anything, but they're significantly longer. And the X height is significantly shorter than the display version. So you can also see how much less compressed the text version is compared to the display. So once again, a little bit of spacing, a little bit easier to actually read this, but they do still feel like the same typeface. They still feel like Snickers. Like when you're reading this right here, it doesn't feel like it's out of place. So we'll scroll through just a little bit more. You can see very important when you're dealing with an international brand. Like I said, I'm American, but I'm living in Brazil right now. So for the first time in my life, I've been seeing way more accents on Latin letters. And an international brand like Snickers is gonna have to have all of these different accents and different language support. So it's really great that they managed to do that here. 600 languages supported, so they should be fine for pretty much anywhere that's got a Latin or Cyrillic or Greek alphabet. And there it is. We'll go ahead and stop right there. But yeah, I think this one's excellent, and I agree with THS, who said that this would be excellent for sports. Unfortunately, no one else is going to be able to use this, but they could definitely take inspiration from what was it? American Gothic? Gothic Sans? I can't even remember now. Right here, American Gothic. They could also take inspiration from American Gothic, but it does feel very much like a sports thing, and I think that'll go well because a lot of Snickers does sponsor a lot of sports events and stuff like that, so it should feel very much in place at all of those. This next typeface is also from Studio Drama. Go ahead and pull this up. Same website. They'll have the same video that doesn't work. You can see right here, it's just a blank screen. I'm going to get a drink of water. We'll see if this pops up, and then I'll respond to chat. Okay, doesn't look like it's going to happen. Go ahead and scroll down to the static images here. THS says, it reminds me a bit more of the Burger King font. It feels as heavy, craves attention, but it's much more pointy and more dynamic. Yeah, the Burger King font's definitely really bold and loud as well. But yeah, it's definitely more rounded, which is good for them because, you know, the burgers and stuff, you don't want a real sharp font for food. You want it to feel a little bit softer. And they also need to differentiate themselves from the other burger places. And McDonald's uses a very sharp typeface, you know. So this next one is also from Studio Drama. And this one is a rebrand of BBH, of which I was not familiar. We can go ahead and pull up the website as well real quick, because they are using the typeface on their website. I did pull up Snickers. We can go ahead and show you Snickers before we get too deep into this. And you can see Snickers has not fully implemented this yet. They have a little bit, but you can see on the Snickers branding right there on this almond bar, they're still using the old typeface, but they are starting to get it in here. You can see right here, they've got it on some of these images and stuff, just not everywhere yet. BBH, this is their website right here, and you can see the font is in full swing. They've got 3 typefaces they're using. I'm going to go back to Studio Drama right here, though, and we can see all 3 of them right here. There is BBH Bartle, BBH Bogle, and BBH Hegarty, and the BBH stands for Bartle, Bogle, and Hegarty. So from what I understand, BBH is a branding studio. Let's see what it says here. We create iconic brands using difference work. I don't know. Maybe there's something missing there. But yeah, it's a branding studio. And they've created 3 different styles for them. Once again, you can see they're pulling from references. I really do love when foundries and designers show you the references, because nobody pulls these typefaces out of their butts. You know, nothing is like 100% original. Never has been, never will be. And I love when people show where they got the inspiration from. It doesn't take anything away from this typeface or these typefaces or this branding. But you can see here that, that it honors the British heritage, and it builds on the classic British grotesque. So for Snickers, we were seeing the American Gothic. Here we're seeing British grotesque classification. But they're pulling from, you can see different wood types, and they're not copying one typeface. They're pulling from all of these different grotesques that were used in grotesque sans that were used in Britain, and creating a typeface that works just for BBH. And they're doing some wild stuff with it. But as we scroll through, you can see there are 3 different widths here, and they are very, very different. You can see Bartle here is incredibly wide. Bogle is standard narrow width, and then Hegarty here is pretty regular width there. And I'm going to go through these pretty quick because, once again, I think this is one of those things where once you see it, you kind of get the idea. Once you get the idea, you don't need me to keep blabbering on about it. But I am going to point out some of the interesting stuff, and you can see there are alternates right here. There are also mono style letter forms. So this is not a mono width typeface, but there are some characteristics of mono width typefaces, like the I with the big top and bottom on it. Gosh, I can't even think about it. Like the big serifs, I guess you could call it. The one with the big bottom serif on it. That's probably not what we should call it. I guess it is kind of a slab serif though, right? You can see the 3 different ones here. One thing I thought was interesting was this right here. I don't know if it's going to play. Maybe we'll scroll down a little bit and they'll show us again. But they actually created these based on like 16 by 9, 9 by 16, and then a 1 by 1. So they are built on like these perfect squares, which I thought was really interesting. And again, some of the stuff you see here, when you see like this can of water, this doesn't really matter. Like maybe they'll have this in their offices. I guess that could be cool. Maybe they actually do have that can of water, but it's not like you're going to see that in the store or anything. This is then just branding their studio. So it does need to be kind of neutral so that whenever they're putting out brand work and stuff like that, it doesn't detract from the work that they're doing. But this definitely has like a very specific vibe to it. The black and white, you know, a lot of studios do that, but it does feel fitting. It's neutral. Here's the 16 by 9. Is this going to play? Maybe not. Yeah, that's the problem with this website, is that some of the stuff doesn't play. Okay, I think we have an idea about what this is. Let me show you what's really cool about this. And that is that these are SIL open font license typefaces. So you can go and get these from Google Fonts right now for free. Use them for whatever you want. And that is awesome. I don't know, I could pull this up real quick. I don't think that I actually put these into Affinity. Let me check though. Maybe we'll get lucky. No, I have typefaces that I was working on before. That we're not going to be able to look at. But you could, I mean, we saw what they were. You can see right here, if you've never used Google Fonts before, you just go to Get Font right there. It throws it up there, and you can download all of them that you have. I'm not sure why Roboto's in there, but yeah, I think it's really cool that you can get all 3 of these for free right now. And as we've seen, it's pretty solid. Obviously, you know, you're going to look like another brand if you download these. So I wouldn't use these for something real serious. But it's pretty well developed, and there's some pretty wacky, you can see right here, these stylistic alternatives and stuff like that, where they've got like the A, the B, the E, all of these different alternates. So it could be something really fun to play with. But if nothing else, you know, it's just another free typeface that was created for a well-established brand by a well-established brand. So you know it's going to be pretty high quality. And you can get them all on Google Fonts right now for free. Studio Drama actually did the Mozilla one as well. So if we go to Studio Drama here real quick, they created the Mozilla typefaces. So if you like Mozilla, I guess you could get those as well. I'm going to get a drink of water, and then we're going to get out of here. I'll respond to chat after I turn my face cam on. Let me see here. Are we on? Yeah, there we go. Hello, if you didn't see my face before we started and it's your first time, this is what I look like. Hopefully my face kind of matches what you were expecting. Gonna reply to THS here, said, showing inspiration is one of my favorite things to do, and I'm glad it's starting to become standard. Agreed. In Poland, showing your mood board is even required when you make a bachelor's thesis in graphic design. Really interesting. Yeah, I know when I was in school for graphic design, it was almost like we all were kind of, myself included, we were all kind of insecure. You know, we wanted to feel like we were original, and we didn't want anybody to know where we took any inspiration from. And we, you know, and you also didn't want somebody to steal your idea. And part of that makes you feel like, oh, if I show them where I got my idea from, then they'll think that I stole the idea. But as you mature as a designer, and it seems like in some design programs, at least in Poland, they do make you show where you got your references and show your work. And I think that's really great. And I agree. I think it's a great trend. We've seen that quite a bit in recent months with typefaces that I've been reporting on, where foundries actually they'll show you where they took the inspiration from. You know, there are a lot of revival typefaces where they just, obviously, if you're reviving Futura, you're taking it from Futura, but some people will rename it and, you know, try to not let you know where they're taking inspiration from. And I really do appreciate that, that a lot of foundries, I apologize, that's my alarm. I do appreciate that a lot of foundries, a lot of designers, and a lot of studios are showing where they take their inspiration from, because there's nothing wrong with it, and it just shares more culture with everyone. So it feels weird ending the live stream after only 1 hour, but that's the way we're going to do it from now on. I will be back on Wednesday, and we'll have more of a normal episode. I know this one's a little bit weird for anybody that's not new. Typically, we always do new releases. That's kind of like the flagship. If Typography News is the flagship program on Jectives, new releases are kind of like the big story that I always cover. I already have a couple of them in mind that are coming out this week, but Wednesday I will have new releases for you. We'll have more type industry news and less of me blabbering about typography news in the abstract. So I will be back Wednesday. I will be back Friday, and we'll do this 3 days a week for the rest of March. Hopefully work our way up to 5 days a week in April, maybe May. But I appreciate those of you for being here. MP says, do you normally stream at this kind of time? Yes. So I just changed it. I was streaming on Sunday nights once a week. I'm going to be streaming starting 1 hour before right now. So for me, that's like 7 o'clock. But just know that it's going to end right now and start 1 hour before this. I don't schedule them on YouTube. So because I don't like when I see them in my subscription feed that there's like a thumbnail and then it's like, oh, you can't even watch it yet. So I don't do that. I'm going to go live same time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for all of March. So it'll end right now, but it'll start an hour before that. So mark your calendars if you want to come back on Wednesday or Friday. Otherwise, feel free to watch the replay. There will be chapters you can skip ahead. You don't have to, sit through the boring parts if they exist. But I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys talking to me. It's been fun to see some new names in chat. And I was Curtis Simpson. This was Typography News number 37, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. Bye.